Good morning, everyone. I think we'll give it just another minute to get everybody on that's logging on. Looks like we still had some jumping on. All right, I think we'll go ahead and start off with roll call. Have Darius do that.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Dwayne McFall, Central Front Range.
Present, sir. Good morning.
Cody Davis, Grand Valley. Dana Brosig, Grand Valley.
Present.
Ray Bird, Greater Denver, Dr. Cog. Greg Mills, Dr. Cog. Vince Rogowski, Gunnison Valley. Brian Pettit, Intermountain.
I'm here.
Hey, Vince here.
Oh, gotcha. Thanks, Vince. Johnny Olson, North Front Range. Kristen Stevens, North Front Range.
Commissioner Stevens is going to be joining us later in the meeting, but until then, we've got Paul Sizemore and Becky Carrasco with staff.
Thank you. Brian Cervenic, Northwest.
Yep, I'm here.
Wendy Pettit, Pueblo.
Good morning, Wendy Pettit and Eva Cosleone.
Vern Hiersnick, San Luis Valley.
I'm here. Thanks.
Brian Blasi, South Central.
Here, and also joining me is Mitch Wardell from Huerfano County.
Ron Cook, Southeast. Stephanie Gonzalez, Southeast.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie Gonzalez.
Colton Black, Southern Ute. Heather Alvarez, Southwest.
Present.
John Becker, Upper Front Range. Kevin Ross, Upper Front Range.
I'm here. Thank you, Darius.
Ute, Mountain Ute, Manuel Hart. Ute, Mountain Ute, Brendan Adams. Okay. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Holly Williams, Pikes Peak, Vice Chair.
Yes, I am here, as is John Liasados.
Thank you. And finally, Eastern TPR Chair Beatty.
Yes, I'm here.
We do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. We do have one public comment. We'll take that now.
So with the public comment, we do have a limit of 4 minutes, I believe, and I think we have Tony Gurman, if she is available to speak.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Good morning. I'm Tony German from Routt County, representing the Safe Crossing Committee. The committee represents concerned neighbors in the West Steamboat neighborhoods who utilize the intersection at Highway 40 and Brandon Circle. This intersection falls outside of Steamboat Springs city limits on the stretch of US 40, where cars regularly travel over 60 miles per hour. There are elementary and pre-K through 8 schools on each side of the highway, along with 3 residential neighborhoods that were built nearly 50 years ago: a preschool, a church, and residential trails and amenities. The intersection lacks a stoplight or below-grade crossing. Students and community members of all ages are crossing the highway on foot or bike, where there's poor visibility to see cars approaching. Neighbors have serious concerns about close calls for students and other pedestrians and vehicles that are witnessed at the intersection on a daily basis. 2 examples include an incident involved a 5-year-old who fell off his bike in the middle of the highway while crossing with his mom, as well as on a daily basis, middle schoolers cross the highway on foot during the morning rush hour, which has caused rear end collisions as vehicles traveling on US 40 come to a stop to allow them to cross. There's a collective feeling within the community that it is just a matter of time before there is a fatality. The safety of this intersection has been a known issue for over 15 years, with a 2010 NEPA study identifying the intersection as needing both a stoplight and an underpass. In 2023, a group of concerned parents created the Safe Crossing Committee and circulated a petition collecting 381 signatures and began meeting with county commissioners. Since this time, the intersection has been visited by CDOT engineers, Director Liu, State Senator Dylan Roberts, State Representative Megan Lukens, Transportation Commissioner Rick Ritter, and Senator Bennett's staff. Anyone who has witnessed the intersection agrees that it poses significant safety risks. In 2024, Routt County commissioned a traffic study of the intersection. Thanks to the county's leadership, we now have the movement data to confirm what we have been witnessing for many years. The engineer's recommendations confirm that the traffic signal is warranted with 2 CDOT warrants met in addition to an underpass. Routt County constituents owe a huge thank you to our county commissioners as they have prioritized this critical safety issue with the TPR and have been pursuing all possible funding sources, including the Safe Routes to School grant, the U.S. Department of Transportation Build grant, a request for congressionally directed spending. And we continue to collaborate with our commissioners to discuss how this project can be included in the formation of the RTA. In closing, let me remind you, we have schools on both sides of a U.S. highway. Not being awarded the Safe Routes to School grant is a significant setback for this project to move forward with the design process. We cannot wait for the next Safe Routes to School grant in 2027. Despite all the right people being involved over the past 3 years and continued efforts of our county commissioners, we have yet to secure the first dollar of funding for planning and building of this long overdue safe crossing. We are losing critical time, and our fear is that there will be a pedestrian fatality at this intersection in the meantime. With federal funding so uncertain at this time, we are seeking the leadership at the state level. We request that the STAC provide leadership and guidance to our commissioners on alternate state funding sources that could be utilized this year to expedite this critical safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Chair, we do have one other public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and take that one.
Commissioner Sonia Mays from Routt County. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm Sonia Macy's, Routt County Commissioner. Prior to that, I was a Steamboat Springs City Council member starting in about 2011. Throughout that entire time, I've worked productively as a member of our Northwest Colorado Transportation Planning Region on issues of shared importance in Routt County, and of course, our region as a whole, including any and all strong support for improvements on Highway 40. We are really grateful that just recently we prioritized additional passing lanes on Highway 40. Well, actually, it's been in the works for a long time, but it's happening for those who are car dependent, and supporting mountain rail and commuter rail for those who want to get out of the cars. These long-term projects have the capacity to support the growth and change that our communities experienced very rapidly in recent times. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, Steamboat Springs and Routt County as a whole have really been discovered. Started with the COVID-19 refugees fleeing the urban environments, having been enabled to work remotely. Later, of course, the ski area put together a significant expansion, making Steamboat Springs ski area the second largest area in the state. So we see incredible development pressure. And lastly, the lack of affordable housing in Steamboat Springs has pushed the local workforce to the outlying areas where they're forced to commute. And from the direction that was just described, 2,400 people are coming between Steamboat Springs, Craig, Hayden, passing this dangerous area that Tony just described. So I'm here just to highlight the urgent need for safety improvements at Highway 40. In addition to the aforementioned problems, we also have become the byway for traffic and congestion when Glenwood Canyon closes. And at our last TPR meeting, CDOT shared some data about crashes on Highway 40, and the data was kind of troubling. So in late January of this year, Our Senator Roberts and Representative Lukens issued a call to action to try to remedy the dangerous situation that is Highway 40, citing delays, injuries, and fatalities. And in their letter, they specifically requested support for the Safe Crossings project at Steamboat 2 and Heritage Park, the project that was just described. They noted that they commended the local efforts by Routt County and engaged citizens and wholeheartedly supported any and all grant funding being pursued to make this safe crossing a reality as soon as possible, encouraging CDOT to continue its similar support for funding. So we are extremely hopeful to receive a Safe Routes to School grant and to be able to do that study just to see what is the most appropriate and safe possibility for getting access to these students to the elementary school. And in reviewing the projects that receive funding, we struggled to understand some of them, and particularly those that appear to provide more benefit to private than public schools. So we understand and respect that there is a committee that's working hard to evaluate these projects using a scoring matrix and a rubric, but we understand the composition of this committee is not fully complete. And we were trying really to find the minutes of these meetings to understand why our project was not ranked as highly as some of the others, with a modest ask of $200,000. So I'm here today because you will be reviewing the recommendations of the committee and potentially advancing them to the Transportation Committee. And I mean reviewing these Safe Routes to School recommendations for funding. So my ask today is that when you review these projects, you strongly consider projects like ours that were left behind. Again, a modest ask of $200,000 compared to some of the other requests. And we're doing our part on our end to secure construction funding. I think Tony mentioned some of the grants that we have been working towards, including this in a regional transportation authority and in our TPR priorities. We are just really trying to highlight and request that we get support at all levels to begin to solve this problem that is critical, not just to our community, but to everybody who uses Highway 40. We really appreciate your time today, and thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to be here and provide some comments.
Okay, thank you. I think we will try to cover that under the Safe Routes to School update later in the meeting. So I think we'll probably ask for some clarification on that process. So thank you. Any other public comments?
I do not think so, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the March 2025 meeting minutes. Those were sent out in the packet. For your review, I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kevin Ross, I'd move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Vince, thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to approving the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes stand approved as presented. Thank you. Okay, CDOT update. Herman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This will be pretty quick. I think we have an expanded legislative conversation later, so I'll save the time for that. But I like to just give everybody an idea of what's going on at the Transportation Commission each month. And this one, actually, we don't have a lot to bring to the TC, so we've scaled it back to just a Wednesday only meeting. So we'll have a couple of workshops. We're going to talk about Bustang and rural mobility. We'll get a statewide plan update from Darius, I think mostly focused on the upcoming telephone town halls that you'll probably hear a little bit more about. It's also our meeting where we have our STIP public meeting. So we open up the board meeting, open up the STIP for public comment, and then at the end of the meeting, we see if there's anyone else that wants to talk on the STIP, and then we close it, and that serves as our public meeting. We typically don't get a lot of folks coming to talk about the STIP. We also have the conclusions of the conversations and workshops we had with Commission last month, one on the Grand Valley MPO's greenhouse gas report, and then the other one is the Safe Routes to School. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to make it quick today.
Any questions for Herman?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Up next is the Transportation Commission report. I attended via Zoom last month. They started off with a joint workshop with CTIO for Senate Bill 184, the joint service update for the rail from Fort Collins to Denver. That was presented on projected cost of doing the upgrades that are needed for that. I did not write down the exact numbers, but it was over 800 million for the improvements that are needed on that line and to get that service possibly started. Commission was supportive of the movement on that. There was a few questions on if it would truly be able to be done for the amount that they were projecting of the low end of projections. It's always a concern with these sort of projects when it's not designed to a high level on the actual cost that it's going to be to do the improvements, but that was presented. And then finding all the matching funds to get the full project going is still a concern. Had Green Valley or Grand Valley MPO greenhouse gas transportation report. That was well received. And we had the budget workshop, and I think we'll let most of that be covered under the legislative issues, as that's still continuing to move. And had Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise Workshop for their revenue bond transaction that they've been discussing over the last several meetings. Had the statewide plan update and the planning cycle. Mentioned the telephone town halls that they're planning through this summer, which will be covered later, and the survey. And then they had Safe Routes to School program review of those awards that we'll be discussing later. And then they had a presentation from Region 1 on debris and the cleanup of homeless camps and those things, and the amount of money spent by Region 1 and the amount of work done to try to keep our highways looking good and cleaned up. That's kind of the overall summary of the meeting. So any questions for me? And also the minutes are in the packet for you to review. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to TPR representative reports. Central Front Range.
Here, we haven't had a meeting since last meeting, but we have a meeting April 14th where we'll continue discussions on the 2050 RTP and MMOF or MMF fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Grand Valley.
Yeah, so as mentioned, we took our greenhouse gas report to the TC in March, expecting it to be heard in April. And then we are also taking our long range plan to our board at the end of April for approval. And then another thing we're working on with a bunch of partners and the Motorcycle Safety Foundation is a Motorcycle Safety Fest on April 26th. It's a Saturday. It's going to be at the Mesa County Fairgrounds. And I think it's going to be a really good event. The intent is just to bring together cyclists and motorcyclists. There's going to be motorcycle demos, motorcycle safety checks, skill courses. There's going to be like BMX demos, and then like Bicycle Colorado, Grand Valley Street Alliance, and our office in the city of Grand Junction. We're going to have booths and looking for others to have booths. So just wanted to inform folks about that, and if anybody would like to have a booth or be involved, to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Greater Denver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Ron Pepsdorf. I think unless Councilor Ward has joined, I'll go ahead and give the report. Looks like not. So at its March meeting, the DRCOG Board of Directors held a public hearing for the proposed fiscal year 2026 through 2029 Transportation Improvement Program. This TIP is adopted to keep the timeline aligned with the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. No new projects are being added as part of this TIP. The board had a pretty robust conversation about Senate Bill 30, which is the mode choice bill. You'll probably get an update from CDOT staff on that. The board continues to have some pretty significant concerns about the additional inventory work that's required under the legislation, the timeframes, and unfunded mandates associated with the bill, despite some committee amendments. So the board remains in an amend position on the bill. And then finally, the board did engage in a discussion with staff about ongoing and upcoming challenges, issues, and priorities to help shape our next unified planning work program that will cover 26 and 27. That completes our report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gunnison Valley, Vince.
Okay, so we had our number 3 planning meeting completed and finished up a list of the initial projects. And so remember that Gunnison Valley is in 2 different regions, Region 3 and Region 5. So we have to do both of those, and we've done that. We've awarded our MMOF projects, and so they're working on getting those, all the final paperwork done with each of the regions and getting that taken care of. It's still snowing out here. You know, I thought winter was over, but guess what? It snowed yesterday, and I think we have more snow coming today and tomorrow. Our next number 4 planning meeting is going to be on May 8th. And that hopefully that kind of wraps up the planning meeting for the various aspects of the long range plan. I think everything's rolling around. We're just kind of waiting for the weather to warm up so that we can start on some of our repairs and various projects that we've got awarded and some of the maintenance things. So that's it for me, unless you have some questions.
Okay, thank you. Intermountain.
Yeah, thank you. No update other than to announce we are having our next TPR meeting April 18th. And so we'll go from there, and I'll have a better update coming in May, and hope to see you all in Denver.
Okay. Thank you. North Front Range.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our council's last meeting was on March 6th, and at that meeting, they approved the updated national performance measures 4-year targets for bridges in good condition to align with CDOT's updated targets. At that meeting, they also appointed John Mallow, who's the Mayor Pro Tem of Loveland and the past chair of the NPO, to be on the Front Range Passenger Rail Board to finish out the current term that's underway for Mayor Will Karspeck of Berthoud. And then finally, the other thing we've got underway is that our Planning Council has asked the North Front Range TAC members to take a look at further refinement of the rankings for the Tier 1 roadway projects that's on the MPO's priority list of projects. And we're expecting that refined ranking is going to come back to the council in June. And then the next Planning Council meeting is this evening. So that's it for us.
Thank you. Northwest.
Hi, everybody. I'm a little sick at the moment, so I'll make my report short, but wanted to mention that Winter Park Resort has the most snow in Colorado this year. I don't think that happens all the time, so thought I'd point that out. Our next Northwest TPR meeting is a week from today. On the agenda is discussing our priority projects, pretty much solidifying that 2050 long-range plan, and then working on our MMOF projects. We don't have a selection committee currently, and so we need to get that underway, and then we'll have a call for projects after that. Other than that, yeah, still snowing up here, so keep it going. Thanks.
Thank you. Up next, Pikes Peak, Holly.
Okay, that is me. I just wanted to update on our projects. They're all going very well. We are doing I-25 between Fillmore and Garden of the Gods. That's going very well. and also the Powers Boulevard west entrance to our Peterson Air Force Base. We're getting a bridge over that, and that is going very well. That is a long-term, the MAMSIP grant, the Military Access to Installations grant. And we're excited to get that finished when it does. And I sympathize with the Routt County problem. We frequently have schools built on our major roads. And I think part of that is because the developers leave the worst land for the schools. So maybe there's something we can do there in the future, but we had a similar situation down here and we're getting that fixed as well. But that was through our Pikes Peak RTA monies and some federal monies. So I can sympathize with those incidents in getting your kids to school. The other thing I wanted to mention, really, we didn't talk about anything that was overly transportation related. We had a military installation resilience review update. And then we also talked about, and I think this one is just kind of fun, the let me get the name right. Next year is the sesquicentennial, but it's also of Colorado, but it is the semi-quincentennial of the US. So next year is our semi-quincentennial anniversary, which is the Colorado 250-150 commemoration. There's a whole website dedicated to it by History Colorado. And if you can say the name, you can have a celebration. So we were really excited about that too. It should be a fun year next year. And that's it.
Thank you. Pueblo area.
Good morning. So we passed a resolution for the US 50 shift project, which will be adding passing lanes from Pueblo to Kansas. It's a $50 million project. And we currently have our MMOF call for projects, and we've received 5 draft projects, and we'll be hearing from them at our TAC meeting. They'll be presenting, and then with final applications due in May. We are currently working on our 10-year plan project priority list. And we had a couple different presentations at our board meeting. We had a presentation for our greenhouse gas reduction scenario. We're a little bit behind other MPOs, but we're making great headway. And it's kind of our draft since we're in between our plans, but it's looking good. And we also heard from CDOT. They gave a great presentation on access and access requirements on different roadway classifications. We also kicked off our 2050 LRTP update with our consultant, and I-25 and US 50 interchange are making great headway. That's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. San Luis Valley.
Morning, everybody. Vern Hersink here. At our last, not our last TPR meeting, but our last meeting of our subcommittee for our updated project list, we met and approved the updates to present at our next TPR meeting for approval. Project update is, I guess the biggest one of note is there's a wildlife crossing east of Blanca that has begun construction. End of report.
Thank you. South Central.
Good morning. We don't really have much activity this last month. Our next meeting is April 24th in Walsenburg. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Southeast.
Hello, this is Stephanie Gonzalez. We have been working diligently with our Thriving Communities program that was awarded from DOT to identify local projects seeking to fund projects that are needed and that need grant consultation. It's been a big effort that will complement our 2050 planning efforts as we identify projects in each of those communities. Our next meeting is going to be April 23rd from 9 to 12:30 to review our long-range plan. And I believe that's meeting number 4. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Southern Ute. Just don't seeing anyone. Southwest.
We are currently working on our MMOF applications that we received. The subcommittee met, so we'll be making a recommendation at our TPR meeting next week. And we are still in process of updating our long-range plan, and that's all we have.
Okay, thank you. Upper Front Range.
Thank you, Gary. We had our meeting here the first part of March. We finalized and accepted our list of top projects and our MMOF projects. So we got that done. We did it a little differently this year. So instead of numbering them 1 through 30, we simply made a list of 30. And it seemed to work out quite well where we were able to incorporate all 3 counties' goals. And then as funds maybe become available, we can look at that list and figure out which option fits best. We do a pretty good job of keeping things equitable between the 3 counties. So all parties were fine with the new process. We got some updates from our partners at CDOT, and they presented to us their new plan. And our next meeting is the first week of June. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ute Mountain. You want to come on? Okay, not seeing anyone. Eastern, my district. We had our TPR meeting on March 11th, and I was elected co-chair to replace Chris Richardson, our representative now at the State House. We reviewed our list of projects for our 2050 plan, and we're continuing to work through those. We had our MMOF call for projects. We've only had 1 application. It makes it difficult for us to find projects and communities that are willing to step forward and try to use those funding sources. Hopefully we can get more people to use those funding streams that we have to help our communities. Otherwise, just gearing up for the summer construction season on I-70, some more resurfacing out by the state line and other projects throughout our region. Looking forward to those getting done. That's it for Eastern. Federal partners, federal highways. You have anybody from Federal Highway on?
Don't think they're on, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do we have anybody from FTA on to give an update? See anybody? All righty. Any other reports from any of the PPRs? All right, not seeing any. Up next will be our legislative report. Who's jumping in first, Jamie or Emily?
Jamie's going to jump in first. Emily has a lot more to cover because it's been so busy at the state legislature right now, and she wants to make sure she has time to go over budget stuff. I have a dog that's barking. I apologize. I'm so sorry, guys. There's a FedEx package being delivered. So this morning, I just wanted to give you an update that there's not much to update going on in Congress right now in terms of transportation. I'm so sorry. Emily, do you want to jump in and I'll hop on after you while I deal with this? I'm so sorry.
No worries. Hello, everyone. So yes, like Jamie mentioned, there is quite a bit happening right now. It's a very busy time of year at the state capitol. I believe it is day 87 of 120. So we've got 33 more days left. I'm going to kick it off with just a few bill updates. and then go into budget updates. And I think Jeff will also support with any questions and maybe expand on what I'm going to speak to as well. So just quick updates on a few bills. I know Dr. Cog mentioned the mode choice bill that was up in committee on March 12th, I believe, and was referred to appropriations. That bill did have a strike below amendment that changed the original bill pretty significantly and focused specifically on creating an transit and active transportation project inventory to address gaps in transit and bike ped infrastructure. So basically the new key requirements are CDOT and MPOs will create a inventory that includes cost estimates of and basically has a list of where these gaps are in transit, bike, and ped infrastructure, but by July 1st, 2026. And then by October 31st, 2026, there will be a report provided to the Transportation Legislative Review Committee on the Transit and Active Transportation Project Inventory. And then for local governments and MPOs with populations over 5,000, there also is a requirement to submit planned transit, bicycle, and ped projects in your current plans to their MPOs for regional coordination. And then there's a few also encouraged actions for December 31st, 2025, including identifying unfinished transit, bicycle, and ped projects, prioritizing projects in DI communities that reduce pollution, and submitting additional local transportation demand management strategies to their corresponding MPOs. So those are some of the encouraged actions. It does sound like there's some more amendments that the sponsors are working on with, oh, sorry, now my dog is moving my computer. So we've got a morning with some active dogs here.
And Emily, before we move on, we did have
Yeah.
a question from John Leosados.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I put my hand down. I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer this, but it was, we have some serious concerns on the bill, especially since we said, hey, can we clarify that this is existing projects? And they're like, no, we want new stuff. And so if we're required to do a lot of new stuff, that has quite of a price tag on it, and identify other new projects, basically. CDOT, you guys would still be required to do this, so you would have to go through in all of the CDOT and areas that you have control over, and you'd have to identify projects. So is there any concern at CDOT about the price tag for you guys as well? Or have they given you more definition of what they mean by new work versus using existing work?
Yeah, our read of the bill has been that it can be absorbed within kind of our existing resources and our existing planning processes. But Darius, I don't know if you want to expand kind of more on how we feel CDOT will be able to implement these within the timeframes identified in the bill.
So my read on this is to be able to identify what we have as part of our current planning processes and to create that inventory that's already been done on there. If that's the case, then that can be done fairly quickly within existing resources. If we're required to add in items later on, that of course changes that, but that wouldn't necessarily mean anything as far as more work, just putting it into a different list than adding projects. Of course, the projects have to be funded by some sort of source, but actually putting in together the inventory itself is not going to require any resources on our end, especially with the timeframes that are currently in the bill. Moving that back, I believe it is July 1st, 2026, I believe is in the bill. So that's kind of where we're at right now, taking a look at that. But we're monitoring the situation as things develop in order to see what is the final version in order to come out, what will come out of that particular, what will come out of the legislature. So hopefully that helps, John. With
That does help. Thanks, Darius. Yeah, like I said, we reached out and said, hey, we want to understand what compliance looks like, because sometimes the compliance discussion or that happens while the bill is being put together is far different than the compliance when we're actually doing it. And so we said we would like to see if they could put us a clarification on what their expectation is as far as effort. And we said, so from existing sources, and they're like, no, this is a new work product, I think is what was said. And again, this is third hand, so maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but it certainly sounds like their intent is for us to identify projects that have not already been identified in other things. So there will have to be a significant effort to go through and identify those gaps and package those gaps up as some sort of project. Now, it doesn't require a cost estimate if one does not exist, but there's still quite a bit of work that could be required if compliance is determined to be under that thing. So I was just curious if you guys had any more, because obviously you all will have a much heavier lift on that as far as the area that would need to be identified. But we still have a big concern, even though ours is smaller, we don't have those resources. And especially, I think Pueblo, Grand Valley definitely probably would not have those resources. I can't speak for them, but it does sound like it's one of those things where they're saying something, but it might not actually be what they actually intend to have put in place. So I was just curious if you guys had any more clarification, and it doesn't sound like you do. So my apologies.
Apologies. I really appreciate that perspective. And I know I've seen a few different mentions of different amendment requests, and I admittedly have been very focused on the budget the last few weeks and not as much on this particular bill since that first round of committee amendments. And so I'm also happy to set up a meeting and kind of dive into this more. I know Darius would be happy to as well. So we can definitely kind of talk through the specifics. So thanks for mentioning that.
I'm sorry, Emily. Absolutely, I want to echo those statements. And as part of the active transportation plan for the statewide, there is some tools that are being developed that may help with some of this. But John, I appreciate that perspective on there from the NPO level as this bill moves through the legislature, and we can be in touch later.
Perfect. The second bill I wanted to speak to is HB 25-1303. That is funding for motor vehicle collision prevention. That was introduced in the House, I believe, March 19th, and then had its first committee hearing on Tuesday, and passed that first Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee and is now headed to the Finance Committee. That bill is kind of the latest iteration of the vulnerable road user bills that we've seen over the last few years. So it's kind of been a new iteration of several different bills. And so this bill would create an enterprise under CDOT that would fund local projects to protect vulnerable road users, and also fund wildlife crossings on state highways. So it's about an 80-20 split. It would be 80% for vulnerable road user projects and grants, and then 20% for wildlife crossing infrastructure, minus the costs of administering the enterprise. And so that was a bill that we've been engaging on as well. The fee structure is a $3.50 a year insurance fee on auto insurance. So that it equates to about 29 cents a month per vehicle. And that is similar to some other enterprises that we've seen at the Department of Public Safety. And so that bill is continuing to move through the process, but I'm happy to speak to anyone about questions about that bill as well, feel free to read through it and take a look. It's HB 25 1303. And then those are just the two bills I wanted to cover, and now I'll jump into budget. The budget process, of course, has been quite a moving target this year. The long bill was introduced in the first chamber later than it typically is, about a week and a half late. So that is kind of pushing the whole schedule back. It'll be interesting to see kind of after the entire budget moves through the process, what is left on the calendar. Because my guess is it's going to be hard to have time to pass everything that the legislature is looking to pass. So there might be some stuff that gets left on the calendar. But some big decisions around transportation were made in the last few weeks. One bill that is being accompanied with the long bill is SB 25 257. That is reductions to CDOT's general fund transfers. And so that is one bill that we were anticipating would be coming because it includes a portion of what we proposed in our initial budget reductions in November and in January. And so just as a reminder, SB 21 260 included a $100 million appropriation for CDOT on a yearly basis over a several-year schedule. This new bill will reduce our general fund transfer from $100 million to $36 million for FY26 and to $50.5 million in FY27. And then the bill also eliminates the ongoing general fund transfer to the Revitalizing Main Streets program that was also created in SB 21 260, that there was a $7 million annual general fund appropriation that was created in that bill. And so that is completely struck from statute as well. That will not affect any awarded projects, but will mean there's no ongoing revenue source for the program in the future. A second bill, which as of last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, we were really hoping was not going to happen, but it was kind of a last minute decision. Then the JBC decided to pursue this change, but that is the reduction to the road safety surcharge. And so that would result in a $3.70 reduction in the road safety surcharge across all weight classes for 2 fiscal years. And that equates to a $22 million reduction per year for FY26 and FY27. And that bill, which is SB 25 258, is drafted so that CDOT absorbs the majority of that impact, and cities and counties are not impacted at the same levels. They're mostly held harmless. Looking at the fiscal note, I think there maybe is a total of $100,000 or something like that across all counties. But for the most part, CDOT is the one taking the $22 million hit for that for each year. Transfer of funds from the Multimodal Options Fund is another decision that was made. That was not a proposal from CDOT, but that has been something that the JBC has questioned a few different times in our hearings, just because of the higher fund balance in that cash fund. Their decision was to sweep 71.8 million of the balance that is sitting in that cash fund currently and has been awarded. And Jeff can speak a little bit more to our thoughts on how this will be implemented. It will mostly affect local projects, but we have some updates on our thoughts of kind of next steps on how we can work together to figure out next steps on this specific cash fund sweep. One good piece of news in relation to the Multimodal Options Fund is that They did not choose to strike the ongoing general fund transfer to the multimodal options fund. So that 10.5 million of general fund that is currently in statute will remain in place. And then the retail delivery fee allocation also, of course, will remain in place. And so there is still a continuous source of revenue for that funding. Let's see, just a few other small budget updates. We were denied our request for Clean Transit Enterprise Spending Authority. We had asked for continuous spending authority. Currently, we have annual appropriation on one of our cash funds at the Clean Transit Enterprise. They denied that request, but they did authorize 3 years of roll forward authority that will happen every 3 years. And then in regards to the marijuana impaired driving program that is funded by the marijuana tax cash fund, that is a very strained fund this year, and there's a lot of different funding obligations within that specific cash fund. CDOT typically receives $950,000 for our awareness campaign. That has been reduced to $450,000, but there was a moment where we thought they were going to eliminate that altogether, and then the JBC decided to circle back and just reduce the amount instead of eliminate that altogether. So that was some good news as well. And then in relation to the capital development appropriation, I think I spoke at one point a few months ago that CDOT submitted a request for environmentally friendly xeriscaping at the CDOT Araba rest area. That request was denied, but we are being allocated our standard $500,000 appropriation that's just for general highway construction projects, and that's been a reliable appropriation over the last few years from the Capital Development Committee, and the JBC concurred with these recommendations. So that is kind of the general update, but I will leave it to Jeff or Darius to kind of take it away on specifics about the MMOF piece.
Sure, and I can jump in on that, and then Darius or any of his staff, Medora or Michael, can jump in as well if they have things they want to add. But yeah, just wanted to spend a couple minutes on this one because we know this one of the budget reductions that Emily mentioned. This is the one that is most impactful to our local partners. So Emily mentioned obviously that that the JBC was looking, I will say, not at cash fund balances sort of across the board, and one of the ones that they took particular interest in for us was the MMOF. It received a lot of upfront funding under Senate Bill 260, and I think they noted that Senate Bill 260 is now 4 years in the rearview mirror. And so I think that sort of put a little bit of a target, I'd say, on the MMOF fund balance. Now, that being said, I think we were, if there's a positive spin here, it was probably that there is much more in the fund balance than they took. What they ultimately decided to sweep, the 71 million, is we tried to provide some information based on the status of what funds were encumbered or committed in contracts and what funds were not. And with the interest of trying to make any sweep more manageable so that we didn't disrupt projects that were already underway, active. So I think if there's a positive piece on this, it's probably that we were able to protect the larger portion of the MMOF balance. That being said, this is a notable amount that would be swept from the fund. So we wanted to spend just a minute kind of talking a little bit about what that probably means. Recognizing in particular, I just heard several of you talk about calls for projects for MMOF. So the first thing, as I kind of noted, I think we're endeavoring to keep projects in the MMOF that are already underway or soon to be underway moving forward. I think based on the fund balance we have and sort of the portfolio of projects, I don't anticipate that this is a situation where we're going to be stopping projects or this summer or I think projects that are
that far along that are moving forward, I think we expect will move forward. That said, we are going to have to work with the TPRs and MPOs to essentially reconstrain the MMOF portfolio to account for that approximate $71 million reduction. So DTD staff have been working on this, working with some of my staff from the Office of Financial Management and Budget. I think we expect to provide the MPOs and TPRs with updated planning allocations all the way out to fiscal year 29, recognizing that some of you have awarded funds all the way out to fiscal year 29. And those updated planning allocations will effectively reflect the reduced amount of funds available, assuming that this passes in its current form. The MPOs and TPRs will then need to utilize those updated planning allocations to make decisions about how we are going to reconstrain to the reduced amounts of funds available. That will mean that projects are going to have to be canceled or pushed out. Many of the, some MPOs and TPRs have awarded projects beyond fiscal year 25 out to fiscal year 28 or 29. Some have not. Some are in the progress of doing awards right now. And so this will mean that awards will have to be canceled or pushed out to further years beyond fiscal year 29. Or if calls haven't been conducted yet, it means that we're likely going to have to reduce the amount of funds in those upcoming award cycles. I'll say that, to the point, I think we heard some updates from folks about MMOF calls in progress right now. I think it's probably makes sense based on where things are at, that if calls are in progress, you might want to pause them until we have additional information and can provide additional guidance, which I think we're hoping to do in the weeks ahead. I think we'll have additional communication coming soon, and then final guidance, I think, hopefully pretty soon, recognizing that the budget process is still moving forward right now. So I think the fact that we have ongoing revenues in these programs through the annual general fund transfer and the retail delivery fee does give us some flexibility that wouldn't be there if we didn't have those ongoing revenues. We still have a $71 million cut, but because we have those ongoing revenues, it gives us the ability to say, if we want to preserve those awards that are already awarded through 25, we can do that, but it's going to mean pushing out those awards in future years. And so I think those are the decisions that we'll be looking for the MPOs and TPRs to make. Which of those projects get canceled, which of those projects move forward, which of those projects get pushed out. So again, I think a lot of details we'll have to provide in terms of additional guidance and that we're working on, and we'll share with you as soon as we're able. So that was a high-level overview. I'll pause there, see if Darius or any DTD staff have anything they want to add. Otherwise, if there's questions, we can take some questions too.
Mr. Chair, I would defer to the expert staff that I have, Michael Snow and Medora, on any further updates to what Jeff has mentioned.
Okay, Michael.
Yes, good morning, Chair. And thank you, Emily and Jeff. One thing I wanted to clarify, Jeff mentioned, was that because several of our regions are in the middle of calls for projects, there is some value in actually having received, for some of you have already received draft and final applications, and there's value in that because that also identifies other projects in your region that perhaps are awarded previous funds but need additional funds. And it's just helpful for, I think, your TPRs to know those situations and know those amounts, so that you can make the best decisions once you sit down and need to do that and draw those awards back to a new planning allocation. So I think what I'm trying to say is, if you have application cycles underway, there's value in letting those continue to the point that you've accepted final applications, but that you can pause doing evaluations and award decisions until you have new planning totals and you then have a more informed situation to make decisions about the entire portfolio of projects. And I think maybe just Gunnison Valley that has actually formally, voted to make their awards, but hasn't actually made the formal notifications of them. You can obviously withhold sending those notifications.
Okay. Any other questions on those topics from anybody? Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jeff, and Michael for the additional information. It would be helpful to get some estimates about how the sweep is going to be allocated so that we can inform legislators about the impacts rather than waiting until after the decision is finalized. And so is it CDOT's intent when you are estimating the reduced allocations through 2029 that sweep will be split in the same proportion that the MMOF funding is split currently 15% state, 85% local projects? That's first question.
So I think, Ron, the answer is that the funds that the legislature was focused on were the local funds. That's where the balances reside. In terms of not having unencumbered balances, the state funds have been going to Mustang and are largely current. So to that point, they even made a point to I think we had identified that there was about $3 million that was unencumbered on the Mustang front, and they voted to leave that untouched. So I think the intent was that these funds would be completely from the local share.
I understood. Thanks for the answer. Obviously disappointing. And I think, look, not to take a swipe at CDOT because there's lots of reasons why these things happen, but I know a lot of our local project sponsors have had difficulty getting project grant agreements executed through CDOT for MMOF funded projects, and so there are reasons for some of the unencumbered funds on the local project side that are beyond the control of the local jurisdiction. So that's again, if we can get some rough estimates of the impacts on the allocation so that we can have intelligent conversations with legislators as they work through this decision package, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, Dana.
Hey, everybody. I think what would be helpful for us is, since we have so many folks that are already working on final applications at this point, we've already awarded 2 at our January meeting, and then we have 5 that are already working on final revision. So if there's a way we could get something in writing to share with the group, share with all the TPRs, I think that would be helpful. Yeah, I echo what Ron just said. I think this is disappointing, and I know a lot of folks in our region have been working really hard on their applications. So yeah, if we could just get some information to send out to folks as soon as possible, and maybe a time frame as to when those reallocations will be made, and just kind of letting folks know this is on pause and it may start up with this time frame, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think I'll let Michael Snow or Darius jump in, but I know that they've been working on some of that communication, so I think we can probably I think we can probably provide something pretty soon. And I think too that I think the intent was to look at that reduction through the the TPR allocation formulas. So I think that's essentially what you're asking for, Ron, is to see what that looks like when run through the TPR formula.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, this is Michael Snow again, just to reiterate, right? So I think most of the allocation projections that I've provided, TPRs, include the percentage allocation that is derived from that distribution formula. So, you know, again, we don't know the final numbers, but I think you can assume that the sweep of funds will be shared by the TPRs in the with that same percentage distribution. So you can make the estimate yourself and see how that affects, you know, which of your future years funds and how much of them are going to be required to keep currently awarded projects whole, and you know when you'll be coming into some new funds that you can be considered for new awards if you haven't made them already.
Okay, Holly.
Yeah, first of all, can you remind the committee what bill was it that created the multimodal option fund? Was that 217 in 2022?
I believe it was actually, Michael, I think you can probably confirm. I believe it was Senate Bill 1, was it not, from 2018?
That's correct. Yeah, it was created in 2018-01, and then its first appropriations came the following fiscal year under two separate bills that put basically transferred the first two chunks of state funds into the program.
And so this wasn't the enterprise funds that were created by Faith Winter in 22, or what year were those enterprise funds created?
I think what you're referring to are probably the Senate Bill 260 from 21 that created let's see, I think 4 new enterprises across the state, 2 of those at CDOT. So the Senate Bill 260 did provide subsequent funding to the MMOF. In fact, most of the balance we're talking about came through Senate Bill 260. It was the upfront funding, some general fund and ARPA, and then it also put in place the ongoing funding that is still remaining, the general fund transfer and the retail delivery fee revenue.
Okay, so would I be correct in saying you cannot raid enterprise funds, but they're raiding a fund that's not an enterprise fund?
You're correct that this is not an enterprise fund. This is the MMOF, yes.
But they are raiding enterprise funds.
No, I don't think I do not think there are funds being, to use that term, raided from enterprises.
Okay. I just that was where I got confused because I didn't think I thought you might have a Tabor problem if you were taking money from those enterprise funds.
I think that is true. So yes, no, this is not an enterprise fund.
Okay. And you know, some of the other cuts we expected, but that one was a surprise to me. And that was where my question was that money being taken from one of those enterprise funds that I didn't feel was appropriate. We can argue about the logistics of whether or not it's appropriate to raid things, but that was my only question. Thank you.
My understanding is that's the general fund dollars that they put into MMOF that they're now taking back. So it's very complicated. Darius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to mention one other thing in regards to this entire piece that Emily had mentioned is the cut in general fund transfers for the Revitalizing Main Streets program. So that's the other grant program that has gone out that has been in place since the COVID era. It is usually gives out the grants to usually communities for Main Streets, downtown projects. I do want to note that there is no effect to any projects that have been awarded or are going forward. No issues with that. There is going to be no more funds probably after if this bill, if that bill goes through going forward after that. So we will probably award whatever is left, and we'll confirm that with staff is for fiscal year 25. And then we'll probably put a pause on accepting any future applications for that program. So at least on that one, there will be no issues with anything that has been awarded so far. So I did want to mention that on the Revitalizing Main Streets program.
Okay. Any other questions on budget or those issues? Okay, not seeing any. Emily, any other legislative updates from you?
No, that's it on my end. I think that's enough for now.
Yeah, it's a lot. Great, thank you. Okay, Jamie, you're
All
up.
right, the dog has been banned to the outside. So I really have a quick update. There's a lot going on in Congress, but very little of it has to do with transportation. The big news is that Congress did pass a continuing resolution which funds the federal government through the end of the fiscal year. It is holding, for the most part, it is holding spending at 2020 fiscal year 2024 levels. So we're not really going to see a big change. And then hopefully they'll spend the summer putting together a budget, put together appropriations for the coming fiscal year 26 over the summer. So we'll see. Right now, it seems like DOT is very focused on FAA issues. There have been, I'm sure we've all seen in the news, there have been a lot of issues with airplanes and airlines and close calls. But so that it seems like DOT has been very focused on that lately. I do want to mention the Safe Streets for All grant, the SF4A grants are out. Those are available to local communities to put together projects for studies to improve safety. You can do there are some projects that you are eligible for if you want to be installing a sidewalk or looking at a safe routes to school plan, etc. That is out. If you would like any assistance with that, or if any of your constituents have questions about that, please feel free to send them our way. Our grants team has been looking through the NOFO. CDOT is not eligible to apply for anything, so we just want to make sure that we're supporting our local partners as they submit applications. Colorado has done very well winning SS4A grants. I also want to wish everyone a happy burrito day. That's a pretty easy one to celebrate. So I encourage everyone to either make them at home or head to Chipotle or Qdoba and, enjoy one of America's great pastimes. Let me know if you have any questions, everybody. Thanks.
All right. Not seeing any questions, so anything else for the good of the group? I think we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break here. We're a couple minutes early, but give everybody a short little break, and then we'll come back and start our rural planning budget overview. So see you back in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. I think we're ready to go ahead and start the Rural Planning Assistance Program distribution presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to give a quick introduction to this and then turn it over to Kathleen Collins, who is a planning liaison with the DTD staff, and of course Marissa Gahan, who is the multimodal planning branch manager within DTD. Just as a quick update, these are the funds that go to help run the administration of the TPR. And we're bringing this today is knowing that sometimes there is some issues trying to get these out in a timely fashion, and we're wanting to get ahead of this and get out fiscal year 26 allocations as soon as we can and have those ready. And so this is working off the formula that STAC members approved last time. We're bringing up these amounts for approval today, and we'll do some we'll go through that as well, and then some updates from the TPR administrator meeting that happened, I believe, a month or so ago. So I'll turn it over to either Kathleen or Marissa.
Thanks, Darius. Hello, I'm Kathleen Collins. I work at C.HQ, and I am a planning liaison, and also I help support administration of this program. I help Marissa and Darius manage this program. Next. So today I'm going to cover what happened at the meeting that we held with TPR administrators on February 6th. It was a virtual meeting. And the reason we started holding these meetings is because the Senate or House Bill 23-1101, the TPR study from 2023, many of you were around when that study was conducted. And one of the study's recommendations was to have TPR administrators meet. And I think it's a really good idea. The intent is for them to tell us how we can support them more with TPR administration, how CDOT can help them, and then also how they can communicate with one another to learn different practices and different ideas to streamline the transportation planning region administrative tasks. So we covered the general topics covered at this meeting were welcome and introductions. We also checked in with each of the TPR administrators to report on how things are going for them. We also went over the status of their finances related to the Rural Planning Administration program. And then we also were very fortunate to have Intermountain TPR provide a presentation from the TPR perspective of an administrator. And then we also talked about potentially establishing office hours especially for newer TPR administrators to confer with more experienced ones related to questions they may have. So next slide, please. So the key takeaways from the meeting align with the topics just covered. One of the things that we discussed for the finances was we're asking that the TPR administrators submit their first 3 quarters of fiscal year 25, and that covers July 1 of 2024 through the end of March 2025. That was so that we can ensure that they understand how to get the invoices in, and that they also get their last one in time to get the full amount of reimbursement they can. Then we also, each TPR administrator went around the room and we finally got to hear from them. We were really glad to hear from them because this was the second meeting with them, and the first meeting back in May of 2023, actually, or no, excuse me, 2024. We met with them and we didn't get a chance to hear from them very much. And we really appreciated hearing from them at this meeting. And what they covered were websites, TPR meetings, hosting them, RPA invoice submittals and finances. We call them reimbursement requests. And then also the status of their paperwork that creates the Regional Planning Commission, which is the formal name of TPR administrative body. And then we also, Dana Wood, who's on the call today, gave a great presentation. And she was really enjoyable because she referred to the Parks and Rec TV show a lot throughout the presentation, which I thought was great and added some levity to the conversation. And Dana, if you're on the call right now, do you have any other thoughts on best practices that you would like to share with the group here today? No, maybe she's not on. I thought maybe she was. But anyway, and another thing that's still on my plate to do and needs to happen fairly quickly is establish some office hours for the TPR administrators. It'll probably take place the end of April or potentially sometime in May, so that newer TPR administrators can learn from more seasoned administrators. Any other comments from TPR administrators present today? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, any comments or questions from anybody? Okay, I'll pass it on to Marissa because she's going to take over and talk about some of the financial aspects. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Kathleen. It was a really great meeting that we had back in February with the TPR administrators, and definitely a big thanks to Intermountain TPR and Dana for sharing some best practices. So shifting over to talk about the rural planning assistance, the financial support that we provide to the TPRs. So again, this is the purpose of this funding, why we do it. It's federal funding that CDOT sets aside to support rural planning activities. We set aside approximately $200,000 a year. So this is going to be getting funds programmed in our budget so that we can give that financial assistance to the TPR start first. That's going to be critical to do on time because I know everyone is nearing the final stages of adopting their 2050 plans. So we want to make sure that that funding is available and seamless so that you can utilize it. So we get this funding. It's federal highway, state planning, and research funding that comes to the Division of Transportation Development. That's what we use for most of our planning. So we set aside again about $200,000 each year for the Rural Planning Assistance Program. You want to go to the next slide. So our goals for this funding are to ensure each TPR has enough for basic TPR administration duties. We set a new formula last year based on some criteria so that, again, TPRs will have enough funding available for especially given some increased responsibilities that we've had from the TPR boundary legislation. So we have a minimum base for TPR administration. We have that set at $8,000. And then we add on funding based on distance from CDOT headquarters, recognizing that those TPRs furthest away from Denver will incur additional costs for in-person meetings for STAC and otherwise. We also give additional funding for duties of the STAC chair and vice chair, and to those TPRs with tribal nations who are responsible for that administration. Go to the next slide. So this is the table that shows our proposed fiscal year 26 distributions. It's set based on the criteria that I just said on the previous slide. The distributions should be the same, are very consistent with what you had in fiscal year 25. The only exceptions to that are Gunnison and Northwest because they no longer have representatives serving as chair and vice chair of STAC. But everything else has remained the same. want to go to the next slide? So we're anticipating execution of the fiscal year 26 contracts by July 1st. And as Kathleen spoke to, we'll work on organizing the next TPR administrators meeting probably sometime this fall.
So thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Kathleen. Mr. Chair, we're happy to answer any questions, but this is, of course, an action item. So we would like the STAC to voice if they support these distributions, and staff will get started on working for the FY26 budgets.
Okay. Could you go back to the TPR allocations? Does Eastern have the extra allocation for me serving as chair? Does that amount include that?
It should, and we also base these on what your spending has been like, and making sure that you have enough funding. So when we reviewed, I think you should be right. You should have enough funding, but if we want to sit down and make sure, looking at what your expenses are, we can make some adjustments, but that should be factored in there.
I think that's probably enough. It's just wasn't sure how much Yuma County was needing for the administration side too. So, okay, thank you. So I'd entertain a motion in support of this distribution.
Holly,
This is Heather from Makis. I'll make a motion to accept the proposed fiscal year 26 distribution as presented in this document.
Holly Williams, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to support the distribution. Any discussion? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to approval of the distribution? Seeing none, motion passes to approve the distribution. Thank you. All right. Up next is Safe Routes to School.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would like to introduce Medora Bornhoff, who is our active Main Streets and Active Transportation manager here at CDOT, who is going to talk us through the Safe Routes to School program. This is a program that happens every single year. There is statute and rules regarding the distribution of these funds, which comes from as part of the Transportation Alternatives Program formula funding that comes from the federal government. But I'm going to turn it over to Medora, who will walk us through the presentation and be able to answer any questions. There is, of course, a recommendation to the commission based off of the awards that came from this, and that will be discussed at the end for STAC's consideration. So Medora, take it away.
Thanks so much. As Darius said, my name is Medora Bornhoft, and I lead the Main Streets and Active Transportation section. And also on the call today, we have Melissa Trukowski-Houghton, who runs the Safe Routes to School program. So we may, if certain questions come up, she may be able to help address those questions at the end of the presentation. So next slide, please. The Safe Routes to School program has been in Colorado for almost 20 years. It started back in 2005. So we'll be celebrating the 20th anniversary coming up here this fall. And it's both a program in Colorado and a movement nationwide to make travel to school, including walking, biking, rolling, and scooting, safe, convenient, and fun for all children. Next slide. We see a lot of benefits from this program, including benefits to individual students by providing opportunities for physical activity and improving academic performance, because when they're able to walk or bike in the morning on the way to school, it really helps them show up and be ready to pay attention in the classroom. We see benefits to parents and families by reducing costs for gas, car usage, and simplifying the process of getting to school. We see benefits to neighborhoods and communities by promoting social connection among neighbors who participate in the program. And we see benefits in the school area by reducing congestion in those drop-off and pickup zones, and improving the air quality right around that school area. Next slide. So a major part of Colorado's Safe Routes to School program is providing grant funding to local communities. And as Darius said, the funding for this is coming from federal formula funding programs. Specifically, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program has a set aside, the Transportation Alternatives Program, that is specifically for walking and biking improvements. And so using those federal formula funds for this purpose of Safe Routes to School grants is a really good use of those funds. In addition to that grant funding, which the program in recent years has been awarding every other year holding a cycle and awarding 2 years of funds at a time, there are a number of other initiatives in the Safe Routes to School program, including supporting community engagement through the Community Engagement Toolkit, providing school crossing guard training materials, promoting walk and roll and bike and roll to school days. These are held twice a year, and the program helps encourage these events, providing promotional materials like stickers and posters to enable schools to more easily participate in this event. The program also offers a free webinar series that has been really popular and allows people interested in Safe Routes to School to get together and learn best practices on anything from evaluation to encouragement to education programs. And another initiative I want to highlight is the Community of Practice cohort. This is a newer offering from the program that works really closely with communities that have not done Safe Routes to School in their community in the past to help get those programs launched. Next slide. So as I said, the grant funding is a key element of the Safe Routes to School program. Since 2005, the program has received 573 applications requesting over $80 million in funding. So there's strong demand for this program. In that time, almost 300 projects have been awarded, just over $36 million in funding. So the demand is far beyond the available funding. There's a link on this slide. You can go see all of those projects that have received funding since 2005 on that interactive map link. And when you first click on it, it will just show the active projects. It takes a few extra clicks to see the full list of projects from around the state. But once you do that, you can click on any one of those dots and get more information about the location, the project description, the funding amount, etc. Next slide. So for the rest of this presentation, we'll be talking more about this recent call for projects that was held in the program. So as I said, in recent years, we've been holding a call every other year. And the most recent call we held was with an application period in the fall of 2024 to award fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 funds. Through this application period, there are a number of different types of projects that can be submitted for funding. These include infrastructure projects and non-infrastructure projects. Within the infrastructure projects category, projects could be for crossing improvements, sidewalk construction, bike lanes, trails, speed reduction efforts, curb extensions, arrival and dismissal redesign, or demonstration projects. So anything that's building new infrastructure to make walking and biking to school safer. On the non-infrastructure project side, there are projects could be walk and roll to school day events, things like the walking school bus or bike train, education, walking field trips, or integrating safety and education in communications. So these really focus on education and encouragement programs. And all of these are eligible projects, and the program really aims to meet communities where they are at, and the communities will decide which projects really meet the need for their location and then submit that idea to the program for funding. Next slide, please. All the applications submitted are reviewed by the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. This is a committee that is specified in state statute, and the composition, the representation is specified both in state statute and our Colorado Code of Regulations. So the committee represents educators, parents, bicyclists, pedestrians, metropolitan planning organizations, rural transportation planning regions, and law enforcement through its committee members. These committee members are appointed by CDOT's executive director, and they're responsible for reviewing all submitted applications and scoring them using predetermined scoring criteria and recommending to the Transportation Commission which applications to fund with the available funding. We're really grateful to the committee members for their time and effort and expertise as they review these applications. And they really do closely review each application to ensure the best fit for the program. So next slide, please. This is a selection of some of the evaluation criteria that the committee is using when they're reviewing applications. And one thing I'll note is that the Safe Routes to School program is very data driven. And so every application that is submitted does need to provide data on current student travel and a survey of parents. And the information that's required in these applications is really helpful for the committee to understand the current situation in that school area, the opportunities for improvement, and how the proposed project is going to sort of close that gap and meet the need, improving safety for kids getting to school. So the committee looks closely at the data that's submitted, the way the problem is described, the way the action plan is described. Every infrastructure project also needs to include an educational component. So how that is described and defined is really important. And another key component is project partnership. We really need to see strong partnership in the application because that will indicate better chance of success for the project. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you have in your packet is a full list of the projects that were submitted requesting funding. There were 23 applications submitted. It was a very competitive call this cycle. These applications were requesting over $13 million in funds, and the program had a little over $8 million to award. So the packet materials show those projects, including the ones that are recommended for funding and the ones that are not recommended for funding. What you see on this slide are just those projects that are being recommended for funding, and we've split them up into the two sets of project types. So this slide shows infrastructure projects, and the next slide will show the non-infrastructure projects. There are 10 projects that the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee is recommending for funding for infrastructure awards, and those include projects from Canyon City, the City and County of Denver, La Veta School District, the Town of Paonia, the City of Lakewood, the Town of Basalt, the City of Fort Collins, the Town of Cedar Edge, the Town of Lyons, and the Town of Johnstown. And for non-infrastructure awards, there are 2 projects being recommended by the committee, and that includes projects from the City and County of Denver and the Town of Windsor. We will open it up to your questions and discussion now, but I do want to say that coming up next, following the discussion today and STAC's recommendation, we will be bringing this to the commission at their April meeting, requesting approval of these awards. So thank you, and I'll turn it back.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this? I guess since we had the public comments at the beginning, could you touch on the Routt County project and why it wasn't selected, or how it was? Just some background.
Sure. Yeah, as I said, this was a very competitive call for projects, so the committee had to make some hard decisions. They looked really closely at the materials submitted in each application. And for the applications that are not being recommended for funding, either there was incomplete information. So one example is a student tally is required for every application that is submitted. So in the Routt County example, that was not provided in the application. And some of the other projects that are not being recommended for funding, we're just not ready enough. Part of the criteria that the committee looks at is shovel readiness. They want to see projects that are ready to go so that these funds can be put to use right away. And so some of those may be a great fit for the program and may just need to return in 2 years when the next call is held. And others are great projects as well and may not be a good fit for Safe Routes to School. And so one thing the committee and the program staff will be doing is following the TC's decision on which projects to award funding to. Each applicant will be contacted, and for applicants that are not being recommended to have their project funded, they'll be provided with other grant opportunities that the program staff feel would be a better fit for their program, helping them lead to other opportunities to fund their project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I would also like to ask if Rachel Peterson could unmute, because she is one of the members of the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, and she is here today. Rachel, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Medora. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the selection committee, and it's a very collaborative process, and we have really great members of our committee. And I've been on it in the 2023 cycle and then again this cycle. And something that was different this year was we raised the infrastructure cost from $750,000 maximum to $1 million. So we received a lot more applications, and especially a lot more high dollar applications. So it made it a very competitive process. However, how we conduct our operations is it's very data driven. All members provide the comments, and I feel very confident with the decisions that we did make. There was 12 applications that were awarded and 10 that were not. So it was very competitive, and I wish that we could fund all of them. But unfortunately, we don't have the resources for that. But I feel good about the process, and very happy with the work that both Melissa and Medora have done on the back end. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions as well on behalf of the selection committee.
Thank you. Yeah, there's always never enough funding for all the things we want to do. So we have to make cuts. Kristen Stevens.
Thank you. I'm here from North Front Range MPO, and I'm sorry I came late to the meeting. I had some family business to take care of. But just first of all, thank you, Rachel, for you and your team for the work that you do to sift through the applications. Really appreciate it. And for you explaining some of how that work's done. And I think, Medora, you may have answered this as you were talking at the end. There'll be another funding round in 2 years, it sounds like. This is obviously a great program and it keeps kids safe. So do we anticipate those dollars to be at the same amount of dollars in a couple of years? How does that work? Are there any cuts contemplated for these funds? Just kind of curious, because would definitely like to see, this continue at the same level or even more.
Mr. Chair, I can take that question. So as Medora mentioned, this is funded through formula funds, the Transportation Alternatives Program that is part of the formula funds that comes out of Congress. So it is federal funds. It's what's been set as part of statute. I believe is 43-1-1600, section 1600, if folks wants to do some light reading. So only Congress can change that allocation. Well, if Congress does change that allocation, that will determine the change. But we are not anticipating that for right now. We're still anticipating on getting, I believe it's around $5 million for the entire period. The reason why there's $8 million for this period is because not all the funds were awarded in the previous call, because we didn't have as many applicants in the 23-24 cycle. So hopefully that can help answer that particular question, Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you. And I apologize that I maybe wasn't here for the very beginning when we talked about that it was a federal program that was, and that's how it was distributed. Will that be dependent on the reauthorization of the surface transportation bill, or that's just something that's sort of more of an automatic? I don't know exactly how that works.
It will be dependent on the reauthorization bill, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Holly.
There we go. So, my first question would be when an applicant does submit and they don't put in the number of students affected, or they miss an obvious spot where they should have filled something out, are they contacted back? That would be my question on behalf of the Routt County project. And then my other question would be, when you're looking at the data, and I know they're data-driven applications, I just want to know if there's any effort to look in the past 5 years, 10 years to see, okay, are we giving more to El Paso County, Colorado, because they have a really good grant writer? Or are we giving more to my school district down here, Cheyenne Mountain, or whatever, compared to some of the more rural counties who wouldn't have access to stuff like that? So is there an effort to make sure that over a certain period of time, and I don't care what the period of time is, if it's 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, that the grants are being distributed equitably, so the rural counties have a chance to get some?
Thank you so much for those questions. Yes. Making sure that these grant opportunities are available to communities across the state is really important to this program. And so we do take a look at what has happened historically and if there are areas that are underrepresented or overrepresented, and how we can do better outreach and support to those underrepresented areas so that they can access these funds as well. And that's part of the idea behind that community of practice effort that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, of providing that more one-on-one support to communities as they launch their programs. But our efforts to provide that equitable access show up in other ways too. So one thing I want to mention is that although the applications do require quite a bit of data and work to put together, the application period is open for several months, and there are a number of opportunities for potential applicants to seek assistance from program staff. So we offer a webinar that's live, and then it's also recorded and available on demand for applicants to get information about how to apply to the program. Regarding the student tally and the parent survey, there is sort of a already built, relatively easy approach to collecting that data that's offered. And if communities want to do a different approach, they can. But the sort of built-in online survey is available and free to use, and it makes it relatively easy to gather that data and analyze it for the application. Program staff also make themselves available for one-on-one conversations to address questions. And we also offer assistance making some of the maps that are required to be submitted in the application. The guidelines go through how to address each of the questions in the application. And so we really do try and answer the questions in these different formats, one-on-one meetings and the guidelines and a webinar, so that applicants have the information they need to fill out a strong application. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything, if any of the review committee members or Melissa.
I know, Gary, that Rachel would like to speak, but she can't get her hand raised. Rachel Peterson from Grand Valley.
Thank you, Holly. I think that was kind of just for my first initial comment, but at least for this question, that was a very good question, and I do think that's definitely something that we are aware of for smaller communities versus maybe larger jurisdictions that have a grant writer on staff. But as Medora mentioned, there are so many resources and opportunities for all size communities to submit a application. When we do go through and make project selection, we still, I think, might be, considerate of those communities that might not have had that grant writer. So it's something that we absolutely consider. And we did look back, I think it was to the 2021 applications in case jurisdictions have submitted in the past. And if they've continued to submit it and show initiative into that project, that's been something that was weighted as part of the decision as well. I hope that helps.
Eva.
Thanks. I guess I have another question, kind of looking at the data. Do you guys also look at existing projects that have been awarded within the last 2-3 years, what their status is, and if that weighs into if they are applying for a new project?
Yes, that is one of the components that is considered. So sometimes we see applications come forward in phases, and so they request funding for a certain phase. And the committee does like to see successful completion of that phase if a second phase comes forward for additional funding.
Stephanie.
I was also a member on the committee that helped to score these and review them. And I too would like to mention it's a very interactive process. I was on the committee years ago, and the process has gotten better, offering the tools that Medora's talking about to be able to do your tallies and create maps and all of this. So when I was reviewing, in order to keep it very how would I say, equitable across, if it didn't have the components that were required, especially since there's a guide that offers that and the webinar offers that, that really impacted the way I scored, seeing that some projects took the time to use the tools that were recommended for the application. So even if they don't have a grant writer on staff, there are guides, and I felt like there was quite a few opportunities to be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm having difficulties with this, and staff would be available to help walk through the process. So in my estimation, when you are trying to apply for these, use the guide and make sure that you're following and check marking, hey, I've got that, I've got all of these steps taken care of, because when it comes to the committee, I have the check mark that says, oh, yep, they've got this, they've got that, and it helps to make for a stronger application if the general criteria is there to be met or has been met.
Thank you. Holly.
And I just have one more question. You may have mentioned this. Is if there is a consideration if a school brings in matching funds, are they giving a higher consideration in that, or if the county's willing to pitch in to help? I know that the problem we've had with some charter academies here is our developers always will give the least developed lot, the worst lot to the charter academies or the school district, because then they don't have to pay, and that's especially true for our charter academies. So we've had problems with a specific charter academy down here that we've had to really work hard to address, but we have an RTA, so we have extra funding to help address that. But I think that is there a process where you consider if someone's coming in and offering matching funds to help?
One of the scoring criteria is the strength of partnerships, and that gets into what each partner is bringing to the project in terms of their contribution of effort. So having strong partnerships and understanding of the different groups that are involved in putting this project out is really important. But I think the actual funding amount is not as critical. You know, one thing we require in this program is a 20% cash match for most of the communities applying. But there is a 0% match option available for the communities that qualify under the MMOF program's match reduction formula approved by the Transportation Commission. And 4 of the applications that are being recommended for funding do qualify for that 0% cash match. And that's part of the program's attempt to meet communities where they're at. If communities have fewer resources to put towards these projects, we want to be able to provide that full funding amount to those projects. So of the 12, 8 have the 20% cash match, and 4 of them are fully funded through the recommended award. I hope that answers the question, but happy to speak more if there's that raises more questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those grant applications are I've been through some of those for transportation alternatives and those, and it's always tough because they're all usually good projects in their own way. It's just having to prioritize. So thank you for the committee that does the work on that. I would just like to mention for the group over there working on that project is maybe be looking at some short-term things to try to improve it. Lighted crossing signs that can be activated when people need to cross to help flash those things. I know some of our communities have started using those for crosswalks in the towns. Speed limit signs, flashing speed limit signs to try to reduce speeds. And I don't know, I know they've changed the speed limit evaluation to where they can maybe lower speed limits easier in some areas without such extensive studies. So they may want to work with their regions to get some of those short-term fixes until you can do the ideal build projects and get the funding aligned. So thank you everyone for working on that. And I just encourage people that didn't get grants to look to their local regions and work with them to try to find maybe short-term improvements, maybe not the ideal build, but we're all under budget constraints. So finding cheaper options that can help at least reduce the risk until an ideal build can be done. So thank you all. Would entertain a motion to approve or recommend approval of the Safe Routes to School grant awards.
Motion to approve recommendation.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed to approval of the recommendation of the Safe Routes to School awards? Seeing none, motion carries. All right. Up next is our 2050 statewide plan update. Darius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're wanting to keep the STAC informed on items that are continually happening, and as soon as we know about it, there may be additional items that come in between STAC meetings. Of course, we have the main meeting. So it's going to be a kind of a little bit of an overview, but just to on some of the items that may be coming up, like the town halls, which we'll mention briefly, and a look at the calendar. And I think the major item is going to be with the TPRs is looking at your proposed TPR plans and seeing if those meet the expectations of the TPRs and getting those approved. But I do want to turn it over to Marissa, who will take us through the presentation and answer any questions.
Thank you, Darius. I want to go to the next slide. Okay, and yeah, just as Darius just said, the purpose of this presentation will be discussed with you the upcoming public engagement opportunities for the statewide plan, and then talk a little bit about where we are with plan development and the upcoming efforts to adopt the long-range statewide plan, and then transition into the 10-year plan update. If you want to go to the next slide. So I think we're at a very exciting place in the timeline where we're starting to see the hard work of everyone, definitely all the rural TPRs especially, come together. So for the rural TPRs, you'll be seeing drafts of your plan at your next TPR meeting, which really represent over a year's worth of work involving many long meetings and thoughtful conversations. So just want to say thank you, and that we really appreciate the time you've devoted to developing your regional transportation plans, the time you put into developing your priority project lists, and we're really excited to share with you those draft plans at your next meeting. So as a reminder, the regional transportation plans are included as appendices to the 2050 statewide transportation plan, and the rural plans along with the MPO plans, which the MPOs develop themselves, really serve as the foundation for the 2050 statewide transportation plan that we anticipate will be adopted in August of this year. So from here, from the We Are Here arrow, we're going to be transitioning into doing more public engagement and working with you to develop the next 10-year plan, which we're targeting to adopt by the end of this year, December of 2025. So I'll talk more about the public engagement efforts and the 10-year plan update in the next slides. I want to move this on. So this, I think you saw last month, but we are trying to move forward with the scheduling the Transportation Commissioner telephone town halls. These are great opportunities for the public to learn and participate in the plan development process, speaking directly to their transportation commissioners, and be able to ask them questions and get answers. I'm going to go to the next slide. So there's some really cool new features that we have available this time. We will be able to call mobile phones and landlines, have the possibility of doing an online video simulcast, and then we'll have a registration page with instructions and links. We'll definitely be looking for the help of STAC here to share this information so that we get good participation. We'll also have the ability to do Spanish language interpretation. So we just procured the vendor late last week, I believe, and we meet with that vendor later today, actually, to hopefully start finalizing some of the dates for these telephone town halls. And once we have those dates locked in with the transportation commissioners and the vendor, we will be sharing them out with STAC so that you can, again, help us promote them, and then even would love your participation in the telephone town halls if you're interested.
Marissa, before we go on, I think this may be an item that we may send out as an email before the next STAC meeting. So we may, just in case those things get started before that, we're running under a little bit of a tighter timeline than we expected, but that may be coming in between the periods. So we just wanted to note that.
Thanks, Darius. Yeah, we will get that out as soon as we can. I'm going to go to the next slide. So we'll also be soon launching our statewide transportation survey. We sent that survey out, a draft of the survey out to you all as STAC members to review and provide comments. So I want to say thank you to everyone here who reviewed the survey and provided comments. We've incorporated your comments, and we'll be sending out the survey publicly, hopefully here soon, once we have the dates of the telephone town halls locked in. I'm going to go to the next slide. So one of the tools we're using to inform both public and stakeholder outreach is this 2050 Long Range Transportation Planning Visualizer tool that you see a screenshot of on the screen. So some of you are hopefully familiar with this tool as you've been using it heavily during the planning meetings for the rural TPRs. But if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this tool, I'd highly recommend you do so. The link is here in this presentation. The tool operates as an online interactive map where you could turn layers on and off. You can see different data trends related to roadway condition, roadway usage, transportation safety, transit routes. You can see where all the current 10-year plan projects are. It's really cool. I know some MPOs have tools like this available for their regions, but we've never had something quite as sophisticated as this at the statewide level. So I truly think it's one of the best things that has come out of this planning process, just in terms of being able to communicate complex transportation data in a very public-friendly way. So check it out. If you want to go to the next slide. I think I talked about this mostly earlier when I was showing the overall timeline, but we are, finalizing in the very final stages of getting all the project priorities completed by all the rural TPRs and putting them into draft plans. Building on that, we anticipate the adoption of the statewide plan to occur in August, with the public review period occurring 30 days leading up to that. And then again, we'll be transitioning soon into 10-year plan discussions throughout the summer and fall. Talk a little bit more about the 10-year plan on the next slide if you want to move us on. So just setting the stage for the 10-year plan update, it was about 5 or 6 years ago that we first embarked on developing our first ever 10-year plan for the state. We also call this sometimes our 10-year strategic pipeline of projects. The reason that we stood up the 10-year plan to begin with was so that we had a shorter term sort of an action plan, so to speak, that considered the goals, focus areas, and priorities from the long range planning process, and then actually identify strategic projects that would best support that collective vision over the next decade. So with the help of Senate Bill 267 at the time, we stood up our first 10-year plan in 2019, which funded the bulk of projects in that first 4-year prioritized plan period from 2019 to 2022. And then we revised the plan in 2022 to adhere to the greenhouse gas planning standard. And then we prioritized projects based on updated funding streams for 2023 to 2026. So that takes us to where we are now, where we need to develop a new 10-year plan that will cover fiscal years 2027 through 2036. We'll again be prioritizing projects for the new 10-year plan in 4-year increments at a time, starting with 2027 to 2030. So the projects in our current 10-year plan that are now in the out years, that fiscal year 27 plus box, that will become the basis for the new 10-year plan. And the CDOT regions will soon be working with you to update those project costs, the scopes, and align them with available funding for the new 10-year plan. We're anticipating adopting the new 10-year plan by the end of this year. So again, December 2025. I'll move us to the next slide. So before we shift all of our focus and energy to building the new 10-year plan, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate all that we've accomplished in our current 10-year plan. So projects funded in fiscal years 19 through 26 of our current 10-year plan represent about $4 billion in strategic funding, with almost 80 projects in the plan being complete and another 45 under construction. We knew that when we first adopted our original 10-year plan, we had a very important obligation to show the public, our stakeholders, and our elected officials that we were being accountable on delivering the projects in the 10-year plan. And so to that end, we really try to go above and beyond to show that we're being accountable and transparent, recognizing that funding is very limited and that we are really trying to put every single dollar to good use based on what we heard firsthand was important to the people of Colorado. So we have a lot of really cool tools. There's a link in here, but we have a dashboard. That's where I got the statistics that are that information I just pulled with the number of projects being complete and under construction. So this is updated quarterly, so you're able to show in real time what projects are being complete, what projects are moving from design to construction, and how we're spending our funding. So in line with that, we do quarterly 10-year plan reporting, updates to the document, those colorful tables that many of you might recognize. We include an annual 10-year plan report with the department's budget submission. We will be also updating our fact sheets as part of this 10-year plan update. And we try to link to project websites, which have even better and lots more information about each and every project. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it to the last slide and turn it back to Darius if he wants to add anything else.
No, Marissa, thank you for the update on that. I think there will be a lot of conversations as we go through, first being the approval of those regional plans, which we mentioned a couple of times, and that's probably going to be the next item on there. And as we go through this process, there might be further discussions with all of our partners in order to develop some of this stuff, to develop some of these plans, and looking at the fall when a lot of these things will be coming together. Starting in August with the statewide plan, which will lay out the vision for transportation over the next 20 years, then going into the adoption of the 10-year plan, which we're anticipating and we're shooting for December of 2025, and will take effect on July 1st of 2026. So with that, we're open to any questions from STAC members.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the statewide plan update? Do you have any start date on those telephone town halls yet at all, or is that still up in the air?
We are anticipating, I want to note that we're trying to do this as quickly as possible, knowing that we want to make sure we have the vendor on board that can support some of that complicated piece. But we think it should be towards the end of the month, perhaps even the 29th. A couple of the items that we're working on is making sure that we have all the logistics done, making sure that the scheduling with the commissioners is where they're available that particular day. And going through May, probably into early June. It's a little later than what we had wanted, but as soon as we have that schedule nailed down, we will send it out to the STAC members, and staff will be working on that with not only my staff, but also the Office of Policy and Government Relations to kind of work through the scheduling piece and making sure that we have everybody available. And that's probably going to be a midterm update that we will send out through the STAC email list.
Right. Okay. Do you guys have the ability to send directly to all the members of each TPR, or does each TPR have to forward that information?
Marissa or Aaron, I may phone a friend here on that question. I'm not quite sure.
I believe we have a good chunk of the distribution list for each of the RPC memberships. We can certainly double check internally. I anticipate once we start to distribute the email blasts from the telephone town halls, most folks are probably going to get it from a couple of different places. So you're more likely to get duplicates than you are to miss it, but we can double check and make sure that it is.
Yeah, just as those start coming out, and I think even for the STIP reviews for public review, it'd be good if those could be given directly from CDOT if you have that information, in addition to encouraging the TPRs to also forward the information to the members. Just trying to reach as many people as we can with these planning sessions and things that we have coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other, Holly?
Yeah, my only other comment was if you send it to CCI and CML, then you'll get a lot of elected officials who might be interested in this.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate the advice.
Yeah, trying to reach out to all the elected officials and those things is important to try to get that input and get them involved because they need to be our partners.
Well, we tend to have opinions. I don't know why, but we do.
All right. Any other comments on the statewide plan update? Questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our 26 to 29 step development.
And I believe, hi, this is Jamie, everybody. I would turn my camera on, but Zoom doesn't like me this morning. It's not letting me turn my camera on. And I do have a presentation for everybody. I am going to give a real high-level overview of the STIP and the planning process because we do have some new STAC members and some new staff, I think even at CDOT, that may or may not be familiar with the entire planning process and why we do the things we do. So I'll go ahead and get started and thank you. So as you all know, we are currently working on the 2050 statewide plan. And within all of that planning process, we have to put together all of our regional plans, or you as TPRs and MPOs get to put together your regional plans. Those all get consolidated and meshed together into the statewide plan. And then we have our 10-year plan, which is not a federally required plan, I should note, but it is something that we've all agreed upon to help set the priorities for Colorado and where we want the transportation system to go and the major projects that we see coming down the line. And then once we have all of those plans in place, we basically put together the 4-year STIP. Now, all of this takes a lot of communication and inputs from all of our planning partners and a lot of people coming to the table to give us our information, as you are well aware from all of the things we're doing with the 2050 plan right now. Can I get the next slide, please? So it is the statewide plan, or the STIP is a federally required plan. It does have to be fiscally constrained, where we have to look at the revenues we reasonably expect over a 4-year period, and we cannot put projects in there that are going to cost more than what we are expecting revenue-wise. The whole STIP is, again, it's part of the planning process, so we have a lot of public outreach and a lot of discussions with our planning partners, such as all of you, and we put it all together into the STIP. The STIP is basically 4 years of what we are looking to initiate, continue work on, or complete within a 4-year period. And we do update our STIP every year right now. This allows us a lot more flexibility for moving projects in and out of the STIP and getting that recognition from our federal partners that our 4-year plan of projects is a whole 4 years, rather than we start it with a 4-year cycle and then we lop off we lose a couple of years as we do it if we were to update it every couple of years. So we update it every year, so we have a full 4 years to plan from. And we, as Gary mentioned, we are putting together the draft FY 26 to 29 STIP as we speak. So, and I'm hoping to have that online for public consumption later today. It is not up there yet. I'm running into some accessibility issues. I love accessibility. I don't like Acrobat, but we won't go into that. Next slide, please. If you're going to look at the STIP, one of the things you have to understand with the STIP is that we do have 2 different types of projects within the STIP. We have regionally significant projects, and these are typically large scale, kind of our monster projects, if you will. They tend to go through a lot more environmental findings. They cost a lot more money generally. And they are individually or identified individually in the STIP. Some good examples of current regionally significant projects, of course, are I-25 North and now the Floyd Hill project. Next slide, please. Our non-regionally significant projects are typically smaller projects, or they tend to be in STIP pools, such as our surface treatment pool. This allows us to move money around within a pool without exceeding the pool total, but we can kind of shift priorities within that pool as to when a project's going to kick off or continue work, or if we need to supplement funding to it, we can kind of take money from another project, or if there's even available funding within the pool itself, and add it to projects where needed. Next slide, please. And I know I'm going through this very quickly, so at the end, I'll entertain any questions you have. This is what our current STIP report looks like. This is going to change, as I'm going to explain here in a few more slides. But typically, and I don't know how well you can see this, but this top project on this slide shows a STIP pool, and you'll see that it's got a parent name, and then it's got little babies over here on the right-hand side. So it's identifying the individual projects within that STIP pool. Our regionally significant projects, as I said, are typically identified individually. With some of our larger projects like I-25 North and with Floyd Hill, we are taking a new approach to that. We are actually setting up our regionally significant projects such as Floyd Hill and I-25 as STIP pools, but all of the little projects within that STIP pool only pertain to that larger project. So if you'll look here, the last project on this screen is the I-70 Floyd Hill project. And so all of the little projects listed to the right of that are typically the different phases and different segments of the project that we're working on. We've kind of taken this approach so that we can give people kind of a better insight as to what's going on within the project. When we did Central 70, we did it as a standalone project in the STIP, and it didn't include all of the different phases as individual projects. So this, I think, helps the public see what we're doing with specific projects as we move forward. Next slide, please. So as we're going through all of the STIP development, as I mentioned, we talk to a lot of people and we get a lot of inputs from a lot of different folks. So within CDOT, we do a lot of work with our budget office, or the Division of Accounting and Finance, because they're the ones who help us put together program distribution and looking at revenue projections and so on. I personally work a lot with the region planners across the state, because they're the ones who have the knowledge of the individual projects in the STIP, and they're the ones who actually do all of the entry to get those projects into the STIP. And then, of course, DTD and DTR, because we kind of have the overall planning process purview, if you will. And then our planning partners externally, we've got the rural TPRs, we've got the MPOs, and of course, federal highways and federal transit administrations. And then I've mentioned the STAC here, but the STAC is comprised of the rural TPRs and the MPOs. Next slide. For those of you who may not be familiar with the planning process overall, MPOs are those areas that have a population of 50,000 or more. So within Colorado, we have 5 MPOs. 3 of those are actually what we call TMAs, which is Transportation Management Areas. Those are the larger MPOs that have populations of 200,000 or larger. And that would be the North Front Range, which is Fort Collins, Greeley, and Loveland. Dr. Cog, of course, which is the whole Denver metro area, and Pikes Peak area. And then the smaller MPOs that we have are Pueblo and the Grand Valley MPOs. The larger MPOs have to follow slightly more stringent planning guidelines from the feds. A lot of it has to do with air quality and modeling and so on, so that everything can be vetted through that whole planning process. Next slide, please. Once we have tips and STIPs, actually, I should make a note. Tips are created by each MPO. Each tip gets incorporated into the STIP and without modification, as the guidelines say. So we have our STIP, we have the tips. The tips have to be created first, if you will, and then we adopt them into the STIP. Once we have a tip or a STIP, we have to go, if we want to make changes, we've got amendment, excuse me, amendment and modification guidelines. For the tip areas, we've got an agreement set up with each MPO to follow their amendment guideline processes. So each MPO will do their process to either amend their tip or modify their tip. And then once their board approves those modifications, we incorporate those administratively into the STIP. For the STIP itself, any amendment is actually, it more pertains to the rural TPRs. So if a amendment falls within an MPO area, we defer it to that MPO that it pertains to. And then administrative modifications, we do as needed, basically on a daily basis. We're modifying funding to get projects to go to ad or settlements, et cetera. On our amendment side, we do have to take those to the Transportation Commission, and they do require a 30-day public comment period. As for the MPOs, each of their guidelines is a little different, but if they're going to do an amendment, they also are required to do a 30-day comment period. Next slide, please. And this is where I get to what I was referring to before. We are currently developing a new STIP software, or we're working with a company called MDF Commerce. It was Eco Interactive. They've changed their name. But we are going to be using Project Tracker as our new STIP software. And hopefully we will get that up and running by the end of the spring. We are kind of towards the final stages of development. We're doing some background coding right now to make sure that everything that goes into Project Tracker can transfer back to SAP and back and forth. So that's where we're at with the development part. But the biggest advantage of Project Tracker is it's going to provide us a much better public interface for reporting and so on. People can go into the Project Tracker and look for, if you're looking for surface treatment projects, you can find them. If you're looking for items that are just in CDOT Region 1, you can find them, et cetera. So we're real excited that we are going to be able to have a much better public-facing STIP, and it will remove the cumbersome PDF that we currently post. And on that note, the next slide, please. We in part chose Project Tracker because Pikes Peak uses Project Tracker, and this is what our future reporting will sort of look like, if you will. I had to steal from them because we don't have anything yet. So our reports will look a little different, and there might be more information to them. Hopefully we'll do better in the project description area, et cetera. And like I said, we're hoping to get that done later this spring. Hopefully at the beginning of the new fiscal year, we will be using the new software. And I know that was really quick and dirty, but go ahead to the next slide. If you would like to find out more about the STIP, here's the website. This is also the site that I will be posting the draft to later today. And if you have any questions or comments, you can always reach out to me directly. That's my email, and I'm happy to entertain any questions right now.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions or comments for her? It was very thorough. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
All righty. That brings us to the end of this meeting. Anything else for the good of the people? From anybody, comments? Our next meeting will be May 1st in person at CDOT. So hopefully everybody can make it there and we can meet in person. And anything else, Darius or anybody else have anything else for the good of the group?
I do think they bring donuts to the CDOT meeting, so just so everyone
Yes.
knows.
Yes,
And
there will be
we're-
food and drinks.
I
we
just
will
come for the donuts.
we will have coffee and donuts, but also fruit as well as we normally do. And as I mentioned previously, Mr. Chair, we will send out information regarding the town halls as soon as we have that ready to go. Probably in the interim, but yeah, we will have everybody. We will have all that ready for the beginning of May.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll stand adjourned until May 1st at CDOT headquarters. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.